Hi, my name's Rosalind. I'm an artist and filmmaker working across film, performance and sound. My work combines poetic ethnography with experimental film, myth making and fiction.
So, hi, I'm Ishuk. I'm part of artist collective Fourthland. We've been working for a really long time with the intersection between psychoanalysis and shamanic practice, thinking about ways to sculpt objects and places of being together to create new myths about land and people.
Hello, I'm Eva and I'm part of artist collective Fourthland. We work with objects, performance and sound, and we bring people together through these mediums.
Breadrock is a collaboration between Fourthland and Rosalind Fowler. Breadrock is the summoning of mystic law that happens between people and place. The first iteration of this was in Pier, London, working with a group of residents on a social housing estate. And then we brought Breadrock and the myths that were summoned here to Cornwall and Kestle, Barton.
The seeds of this whole project developed from a relationship with diverse cultures on the Wenlock Barn estate in London, where our socially engaged art practice has evolved over the last 10 years. This process of working has informed the idea of Fourthland as a mythical place and our approach to performance and object making. Over the years, we became increasingly aware of the undercurrent of new mythologies that were emerging between people and place, this breadrock of the mystic. So we wanted to transform these mythologies into performances for film. So we came together with Rosalind to collaborate in each other's mediums, to together create I Feel Like Doing This. Inspired by a series of performative house visits to the residents' homes, we created a roaming sculptural backdrop and a series of objects that were utilized to transform the everyday realm of these cross-cultural ethnographies. The objects became imbued with sacred weight and through the collective performance created a series of gestures part improvised and part choreographed. Together, these new articulations of a social housing estate gave everyone involved access to another realm of behavior, repositioning the way we tell stories about living in multicultural societies.
So this project came about through Karen Townsend, the director of Kestle Barton, coming to our recent show Breadrock at Pier in London. And she was very interested in the work and the way that we'd worked with people from across cultures. And she, as a result, invited us down to Cornwall to see how some of those ideas might translate to a Cornish context and working with migrant groups in Cornwall, and also by working with local craftspeople.
For this project with Kestle Barton, we've been very lucky and honoured to meet and have the opportunity to work with 8 Syrian families who's recently arrived here over the last 2 years. And our approach to opening the dialogue and the exchange with these Syrian families has very much been about recognising them as gift bearers, these bearers of knowledge that have arrived here with something to share. And in order to do this, we've been required to create open spaces of listening, and we often think about that as a sort of space of shared uncertainty, a space of shared vulnerability. And in that space of openness, we can actually meet as human beings and have these very truthful exchanges.
So one of the starting points for this project was this idea of creating a series of blessings that would be a place for us to meet across cultures and exchange knowledge and greetings. So through this exchange of blessings, we were offered a series of very beautiful Arabic phrases that then became one of the inspirations for how the project continued to evolve. And these were, I carry you in my eyes, which is said as a form of thank you, and peace to the hand that serves. And these blessings between people are something that has carried on throughout the whole project and inspired all our approaches to the work through the performance gatherings and the film as a form of care and exchange and learning from each other.
We make objects and think about performance as a way of bringing many different people together through the work. And the way that we consider this is how that they can be used as prompts to create this space of collective creation or a dream body that actually summons what in the work needs to be spoken. We often think that this process is a bit like being in a storm together because it seemingly from the outside is very chaotic. and elements of chaos exist and masses uncertainty is there. But we all end up in this flow where the objects that have made kind of almost anchor little parts of intentions along the way, so we can be together and find the messages that come from that process.
So when we work in urban contexts, we often bring the objects that we make to be imbued by people and the stories of the city. And in this time around, in the rural context, we thought it'd be very interesting to do a similar process, but actually bringing the objects deep into the landscape to imbue them with the messages that are embedded within this land. One such occurrence was when we made one of the first objects, which is this portal. It's a woolen felted object that we made one afternoon, and we took it down to the creek to wash it. And as we were washing it, imbuing it with the water of the creek, these 7 swans appeared and they circulated the portal. And that was very beautiful because it was actually the same day that we'd met the Syrian women for the first time, which actually happened to be 7 women. So that is a little bit how the symbolism of the swan came into the work. Later on, this was evolved into sort of thinking about this transient space between worlds, and the whale came into the picture as this huge carrying body, this open space that travels, across worlds to bring messages, to see from here to there. And together, this symbology formed the whale swan. And in the land, we've created a structure that embodies this concept of portals, of windows, of doors, but they're actually not shut windows and portals and doors, they're open, and they invite people to come together, to walk through each other's doorways and to look into each other's worlds.
So we work with the idea of gathering energy from the Cornish land to then bring and share in our workshops. And so we created through film a series of performances in the land to do this. And then later in the summer, we invited other people to take part in a series of improvisation and movement workshops. And through these, we invited people to reimagine and reinterpret some of the symbols and ideas of the project by creating an open space for people to express themselves and experimenting with how this might then translate to film. So I work mainly with 16mm film, and I'm very interested in the materiality of film and exploring it as a kind of craft process as well. So the footage for this film was all hand processed using an ecological formula of coffee grains and vitamin C and soda crystals. And also various parts of the film were tinted using natural plant dyes, including indigo and turmeric. So I see film as a kind of alchemy through these processes which create highly textured and sensuous outcomes and elemental traces on the surface of the film. And then also I'm really interested in the alchemy that comes about through how seemingly disparate images are then presented and layered within the work, and how new meanings or narratives emerge through this process. I feel like doing this, for example, the work we made with residents of the Wenlock Barn estate in Hackney, merges different people and symbols and cuts across time and space. So new relations between people are made possible within this imaginary dream space. And also a kind of larger unifying narrative and sharing across cultures is made possible. Within the Cornish film work, something similar is going on, but extended out further to include symbols of land and animal and plant worlds, to weave a wider web of interconnection through the combination of performance and other imagery. So I see film as a form of socially embedded practice, both through the collaborative processes of making the work, but then also through conceiving of film as a form of contemporary magic with the power to transform and reimagine.
So when crafting and holding a space is very much about the deep time and how to kind of summon a space of listening. So when making an object and laboriously, you go on this kind of journey of the time processes and the handling that is needed to create that. And the same with any creative action, which can then be directly transferred to the way you think about being together in a space. There is always that time process that's happened beforehand, that time that is held when you're together. And that becomes a space of refuge. So very much holding a space and crafting a space is actually about creating refuge between many people and between each other, which allows the transformation of the work to come through, which is beyond what anyone could have previously expected. This process has developed in collaboration with many people, which includes working with a local fisherman, a natural dyer, herbalist, and a psychologist and shaman.
The sculptures in the gallery are forms that conjure transformation and gesture archetypal association. And we often think and play with the notions of the domestic to create a range of mystical objects and performative forms that can be recognized across cultures as something known yet unknown. And the objects themselves embody this collective creation, and we see them as messengers of this subliminal material that will carry the myth onwards.
These objects are made with elemental materials that reposition ideas of traditional craft and the domestic into contemporary works, using stitching, waxing and dyeing textiles with earth pigments and plant dyes and found materials. The best thing about working with storytelling and artists as these weavers of threads means that all the stories that come and the symbols that arise can be held in this web of resonance and dissonance. So everything kind of begins to sing together. And through that process, many people from all over the place can have their imprint upon the myth that is woven. So through this process, we've been very blessed to meet people from all over the Lizard in Cornwall, other places in Cornwall they've travelled to meet us, as well as the Syrian families. And each aspect of the work is a kind of reference and enactment of those encounters that we've had. One of the special things about this project has been the opportunity to collaborate as three women and bring all of that richness of what we each create individually together into one project. So the work that we've been working on in Fourthland and the work that Rosalind's been doing has just been woven together here in a way that's enriched all of our practices and taken us into a new space of creation.
So we're very excited to be presenting our touring work Breadrock from London alongside the new work Breadrock Cornwall, which we've been creating over this year. The work from London will be an installation alongside the 16mm film, I Feel Like Doing This, and in the main galleries we will have the new sculptural and film installation which we've been producing here since spring. On the land we'll have the Whale Swan, which is the place we've held all of our gatherings and which will continue to hold gatherings throughout autumn.
So Breadrock in the land of Cornwall summoned the chant of the Whale Swan, which is this collective vibration of all the myths that were spoken and that were woven into the work that we share with you in the gallery.